Most bankers aren't ready to help you until after their third cup of coffee. But with Central National Bank's after-hours service, you don't have to wait for the bank lobby to open to get help. You can contact us from 6 to 8:30 in the morning or from 5 to 10 in the evening, and we'll connect you to a real, live, local person who can answer questions and fix problems 7 days a week. Bank different. Bank Central. Central National Bank. Member FDIC.
Hey, what's up, Blazer fans? Welcome to the Blazers Edge podcast. I'm Tara, joined as always by Blazers outsider Danny Meringue.
Oh, hi!
How's it going, Danny?
It goes. We've almost reached the time where we can say. I think next week we lift the moratorium on doldrums, the slow period, and we were allowed to use like the really tacky words.
Wait, we haven't even gotten close to the slow periods.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like we're almost there.
Oh,
we're not quite there. I think it's next week is the unofficial. I could be wrong. My timelines are off. We going like end of July now?
It's the middle of July. Today we're recording this on the 14th of July, so that's the middle of July.
Well, no, I'm saying is the moratorium lifted like end of July when we can be like, oh my God, it's the dog days of summer.
Yeah, but the
doldrums.
We're not going to get the dog days of summer unless it's like a week in September, because don't forget there's going to be training. There's going to be Team USA training camp. There's going to be FIBA World Cup, and then they're just going to roll right into training camp.
NBA has done a very good job of making it a 12-month-a-year calendar.
Well,
now.
I'm very worried about some of these players who basically are going to be playing year-round, namely Damian Lillard. Not that he would not do anything responsible, but like I'm just like that's a lot of wear and tear if he's going to go down there and try out, because I can only imagine that he always gives 100% at least, if not 200%. So I don't know. It's going to be there's just going to be so many guys who are basically playing basketball all summer long, and you know we've seen a spate of injuries obviously late in the season. Anyway. Is it too early for me to worry about this stuff right now? Am I spiraling?
I don't think it's too early, but the flip side of that is like you hit on something there real quick before we get into everything that I kind of wanted to touch on. We never really did, was the fact that Dame actually said yes to Team USA.
Right. Yeah.
Like that wasn't like a happy marriage the last time around when he got, spurned for Derrick Rose.
Well, maybe the timing is just right now.
I guess. I mean, I don't think his brand, like if you're looking at it from like a brand perspective, gets any bigger. I think he's at that level where the only thing that really elevates him now is like a finals appearance. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I guess, this kind of, opens the whole debate of, how much do you think Damian Lillard, cares about his brand in terms of like, USA basketball or, the FIBA World Cup or, I don't know. He's a unique talent and a unique guy in the league in terms of the things that he has, announced either through his actions or through his words about what he cares about. And it just seems like I said, the timing just seems right for him to, be ready to do Team USA stuff right now.
I think the fun part about it is, if you're looking from the other side of it, is the fact that guys that, the Team USA had overlooked him for, he's clearly shown out over the last 3 years that he's substantially better than all of them. Like it's the point guard pantheon is Steph, then Dame, then everybody else. And I think it's if you're talking about like the timing wise, it could be nice as a point of like, yeah, he's the guy. And he should be getting the opportunity, and they should be kind of kissing his butt. You know what I mean? And I hope that that's the way that it goes.
Like, because before, what was he? He was also competing with Chris Paul and Russell Westbrook. And was Lowry in it then too as well?
Yeah, Lowry was there. Rose was there.
There were all these guys who'd put in their time before Damian, and I don't know. It's that I've lately become really interested in the generational turnover in the NBA right now. And I'm wondering, I don't have enough historical perspective on, what it's like when, one player's generation kind of turns over to another player's generation. But I feel like we're sort of at a precipice right now. And it kind of reminds me of a conversation that we had down at Summer League where we were talking about guys with long careers who went from being like the guy, the big star, like you're talking like Vince Carter, to willingly taking on being like the 11th guy off the bench, who like, so I don't know. It makes me wonder, what the next 1 year, much less 5 years, much less 10 years is going to bring to the league.
No, that's actually a really good point. I don't want to get sidetracked too much.
I know
more,
we're completely off track with what we were going to talk about.
I know, but I want to talk about this a little bit because I think it's a really important thing is like where the Blazers currently sit in the generational gap and like what it means around the league. So ESPN SportsCenter, I can't remember which one it was, like put out like here's your way too early look at 2021 free agents, and it had like Giannis, Beal, Kawhi, LeBron, CJ, a couple other guys that were on the list that right now are all like, yeah, that makes sense right now. In 3 years, Tara, LeBron's going to be going into his age 37 season. Like, I'm sorry, no. Like, the way the generations are shifting, and this is going to just look ridiculous. In 3 years, Giannis is going to be heading into his age 27 season. That's how young he is. It's insane when you really look at it. But you look at all these generational guys, and they're all going to be old. Like the only guys who are like sub 30 are Giannis and Beal and like one other. CJ's 30, 31. Dame's 32, 33. It's like, oh, good God, what is going on here? Like all these guys are getting much older than we kind of think of in our head. Like if I just asked you how old Steph Curry is, what would you say?
Is he 29, 28, 29? 29?
He's 30.
He's 30?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like it's like when you think about it. Actually, no, he just turned 31 in March.
Okay.
So I mean but in our heads we all think of like still Steph Curry like fresh out of Davidson.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what I mean. Like this whole idea, and it's kind of to tie this back to the Blazers. One thing I think they've done a really good job of that they didn't do for a couple of years was have that next generation of guys behind Dame. Mm-hmm. So you have that ability to kind of mix them together.
Right.
Because if you look at all the title teams over the last 20 years, they all have their superstars. They all have their role players, but they all had young guys on those rookie contracts that contributed, right?
Right. And it's almost like over the last couple of years, everybody has stopped worrying as much about the guys coming up behind in their, manic like quest to get the superstar and to do everything that they could to land the superstar. If that meant clearing the books, if that meant if you had a promising young player who you don't even know what they're going to become, but you trade them in order to have the opportunity to have one of these superstars, it's like, all those other younger guys have just sort of spread throughout the league, and as opposed to having been internally developed by a team. And when you see that, it's rare.
Yeah, the dynamic shift with the generations is also has a interesting timing with the dynamic shift in the league from the Warriors having this consolidation of talent plus a few other teams to, literally every team damn near in the league with two superstars now. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's interesting.
Those two things
gone to two superstars.
Yeah, and those two things have basically kind of bounced everything around. Where you're like, oh wow, that's pretty impressive. But yeah,
we get super philosophical in the off season.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, this is that elective class you take when you've got to get some credits, but you don't know what to take.
But it's that week in between terms in the wintertime where you just spend 1 week taking one class. That's what this is.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't know. Let's just figure out what happens. Speaking of what happens, you went down and kind of saw how the sausage was made at Las Vegas Summer League.
Yes, this was my 5th annual trip.
Woo! I fortunately or unfortunately didn't go. I think after Mexico, I don't think I would have been able to survive that. Like vacation straight into 110-degree Vegas heat. That's probably too much. But what were your thoughts, reactions? Takeaways.
So I watched less basketball this year than I ever have.
Perfect.
Well, I mean, usually I'll go and I'll watch like 5 games a day or whatever. And for whatever reason, at the beginning of my time there, I ended up like having conversations with people from other teams. Cause that's one of the things I love about Summer League is just having people from other teams all in the same place. Cause I always want to know what's going on with other teams. So I was spending a lot of time talking with them. And then the basketball that I did watch, it just seemed like, I mean, it's summer league basketball, so I feel like I already had appropriate expectations going into it. I knew what I was getting into. And what I love about summer league is usual, just like those giant, huge, massive missed windmill dunks and like these huge blocks that go up into the 13th row, and just everybody like giving so hard that they're just bodies flying everywhere. And it's really messy, but like you can tell that people just are giving everything. And it just didn't feel like that this year. It was just more like, it looked more like, your practice scrimmages, I guess. I mean, I wouldn't say that to the Grizzlies and the Timberwolves, who are going to be competing for the championship. But a lot of the teams I watched, it just kind of felt like, okay, turn your shirts inside out. You're the red team and you're the white team. Go out there and play. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, summer league can always devolve into that.
Yeah. So, but one of the enjoyable things that I did is I watched a couple of Pelicans games with a bunch of Pelicans writers, and that was so fun because they were so optimistic. Like, you could tell that a huge weight had been lifted off of them in terms of like having, gotten out from underneath the Anthony Davis drama, plus the addition of Zion. And they, like, every play down the thing, they would be like, oh my God, that was amazing. We're going to be able to watch that all year long. This is going to be fantastic. And they were just having so much fun. And it's just one of those like things that's contagious at Summer League, because you go, oh yeah, that could be amazing. What if they do that? That's exactly
the snowball of awesomeness.
Yeah, like that's exactly how the regular season is going to go. All these guys right now who are playing in Summer League are just going to step right out onto the court on, October 25th, and it's going to be exactly the same. But I mean, you can't blame, anybody for having the optimism, because it's just like totally contagious.
Especially the Pels guys, because like what the season they just went through, they want to, their franchise guy, they want to strangle.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They had just like, had this burden, that had been hanging over them, lifted, and they just like, it was like all the future. There was just so much potential. So I had fun watching games. I saw 2 Blazer games while I was down there, and I watched our old friend T-Rob he's playing for San Antonio. Mm-hmm. And I actually watched 2 games of his. So that was kind of fun. I looked up and I was like, is that T-Rob? Like our T-Rob? Not our T,
Well, do you want to talk about that? Because plenty of people after Hyken's interview and kind of like what that meant for Thomas Robinson in the last 24 hours, getting back into the league and the Blazers needing a big man spot. What were your takeaways from T-Rob?
Well, do you want to say paraphrase kind of what was written about in the article?
Yeah, I guess I'll tee it up that way. So for anybody that didn't read it, Sean got one of the best quotes I think I've ever heard from a player, as far as talking about tenure and time in the league and situations. And basically a GM sat him down after, a couple washout teams in the league and called him a basketball idiot. Said, hey, man, you got to figure this out. Like, your IQ is not there. You may have all the raw talent in the world, but you just don't know what you're doing. And for T-Rob to actually admit that happened, and that he's working on that, to understanding how to be that guy, how to be in the right place, how to be in the right spot.
Super honest.
That's kudos to the GM too, because I mean, T-Rob was a guy coming out of high school, going to Kansas. He was a force. He was a physical force. But I mean, like that, those were the things. Like, what's the one move that we all know Thomas Robinson for, right? The spin and dunk. Mm-hmm. Over and over and over again. And that was like his default setting was, the spin, wash, and dunk. And it's crazy to see him accept that. You want to talk about like what you were talking about earlier, the ability of like Vince Carter, like the old guard, to transition from the superstar in the league to the 11th guy on the bench. Mm-hmm. Like for a guy like T-Rob, who was one of the top prospects coming in his class, to washed out in the league and say, hey, I had a come to God moment and had to figure this all out. Mm-hmm. It's pretty cool.
Well, and one of the things that he talked about in the article is about how he had been so athletic and so just naturally talented that he never spent the time learning the fundamentals. And so, what I saw at Summer League was a much less spectacular T-Rob because, he was a human highlight reel. That's what he was. He did have some, like some alley-oops and some dunks and stuff. But for the most part, he looked like he was, just trying to play the right kind of basketball. And the other thing that really stood out is that he was a lot, smaller, I guess. He used to have those, big, giant upper torso with all that strength up there. And,
the lats for days.
Yeah, and he just looked more, I don't know, like he just didn't look so huge, I guess. A little more lithe, a little more nimble. Maybe not nimble because he is getting up in the years and 20
less show muscles and more function
muscles.
Yeah,
that's a good way to say, like more balanced and just he looked like he was, trying to do everything the right way. So I don't know if he'll, land on a team, but he certainly looked like he was working hard to prove it.
Mm-hmm. Basketball wise though, do you think he's the fit for Portland?
I don't think so. I feel like at this point anybody could have at least some modicum of success in Portland because of the system that they run. But I think there's probably other players that they could use. I think they'd want somebody that has, they're always looking for guys who have actual championship run or, playoff experience. And, at this point, if they can find a journeyman, with that, I think that'd be better than taking a flyer on a guy who's still trying to make it in the league. Though I think like a younger team that he could sort of teach his lesson to, I think that would be a better place for him and a better fit. I don't think Portland really needs somebody like him right now. Yeah,
I'm still, as crazy as this is, I'm still team Joakim Noah. I still think that's probably the best possible fit, and I know a lot of people are. And here's something else I want to touch on real quick before we move on to the next subject. Is when Livingston was released, everybody's like, "Well, we need Sean Livingston. We need Sean Livingston." And I'm like, "We just had Sean Livingston. His name's Evan Turner." Mm-hmm. Like I don't understand the idea of bringing in Livingston when you just had essentially the same kind of player and even less of a shooter. Like I think Livingston last check, I think he had taken 2 threes.
Well, I think when anybody who,
it's the name recognition.
Yeah. And they come on the market with, again, that deep, this guy has multiple rings, right?
Yeah.
So, there's,
he's taken 10 threes in the last 3 years.
Right. So, I think that, getting worked up about people wanting Sean Livingston, wait a couple of days before you get too mad about it. See if it, it might be more just the excitement of oh, Sean Livingston doesn't have a team. Maybe he could be a big fit, but I don't think that necessarily means that people are going to show up at the Moda Center and demand Sean Livingston, No,
I've seen a lot of people that are just really adamant about it. And it's we just had that guy. You just spent the last couple of years yelling about how there's not enough shooting on this roster, and you want to bring one of the only wing forward types in the league who's a less of a shooter than Evan. It's he's taken 10 total threes over the last 3 years. He's taken 73 threes in his entire career, Tara.
Ed Davis may have taken almost that many.
Yeah. It's when you really look at it, it's holy crap, he really hasn't shot threes at all. So he has 1, 2, 3 seasons in his career where he's made more than 1 3.
Well, I would be really surprised if the Blazers decided to make a bid for Sean Livingston. But you said you like Noah.
I strongly believe that the first thing that they will do with their remaining 2 spots is land a big man.
Okay. So why Noah?
He fits what they want to do. He plays the same basic defensive coverage. It's the drop coverage, ice coverage that the Blazers have run that Thibodeau put together. Guess what center he used to do it with? Mm-hmm. It was Noah. So defensively, it makes sense. Offensively, he actually showed that he's got some gas on the tank left with Memphis.
And he really was a bright spot for them a few times when there was not much else going on for them.
And the thing is, like, I'm not asking this guy to come in and play 25 minutes, 30 minutes a night, but like seeing as what he did last year in like what 15 minutes, 16 minutes, I think you want to say he had like 7 and 6. Yeah, he was 7 and 6. And the big takeaway though is in that 7 and 6, he had 2 assists. Like he would fit in really well as that third playmaker. That working in the pinch post. And if you're talking about a guy like Anfernee Simons running the point and you want to kind of lift him up with some more playmaking on the floor so it's not all falling independently on him. So you have Hazonia on the floor, you have Joakim Noah. Now you've got guys you can run the offense through and you throw 2 other shooters out there. Now all of a sudden you've got the makings of a somewhat competent offense, right?
Yeah, I am not ready to just hand over the key. I don't think the Blazers are going to just hand the keys over to Anfernee yet for the second unit. And maybe they will. I don't know. I have no idea what the Blazers are going to do. But in my opinion, and from what I saw, I would rather see Anfernee spend the next year continuing to work on his excellent ability to get his own shot, continue to work on his defense that is already strong without having to worry too much about being a playmaker as well.
I think it's going to be, like I said, somewhat jokingly there about handing over the keys. I'm perfectly okay with it. I would like to see the Blazers do it, and I think for the first time since Damian Lillard, they're going to have a young guy make mistakes, and they're going to live with it. Like, I mean, Zach got the short leash. Trying to think who else over the last couple of years they've Layman, any of the second round guys. They've short leashed all of them. Dame's really the only one that they've had. Myers got short leashed plenty of times. Dame was the only one they just kind of let play through mistakes, and I genuinely believe that they are willing to let Anfernee play through mistakes. And I know that's a high leverage situation. They're going to be looking, deeper in the playoffs, but I genuinely think they're going to go, we're going to let him do it. We're confident he can be able to do it, and they're not looking for him to be a playmaker like Chris Paul or Westbrook or Harden or any of those types, because Dame's not that. CJ's not that. It's going to be work out of the motion offense, work off the DHOs, work off the pick and rolls, look for your shot because you're a shot creator, shot taker, shot maker, and then within the flow of the offense, find other guys. And what I saw from him in Vegas was a lot of his turnovers, with the exception of post-entry passes. I saw people like getting mad about post-entry passes. Number one, Evan was the best post-entry passer this team had. Like that's like not even debatable at this point. Dame and CJ both iffy on that. Same with lob passing. Like those are like lost arts. So Anfernee not being great at post entry pass to Jarnell Stokes in the summer league doesn't really bother me. I was more looking at him pushing the pace. Like when he was getting rebounds or he was getting the initial break started off either a make or a miss or a turnover, he looked to get it up court.
Yeah, he was nice in transition too.
Yeah, and that's something that has been drastically missing.
Right, and that's what Hazonia is going to be good at too. I mean, think about Anfernee and Hazonia in transition. That's going to be fun.
Yes, exactly. And if that second unit can be better in the open court and create more transition opportunities, well, then now we've got easier points for him where you don't have to have him in the half court as much. The flip side of this is, well, then you're kind of dependent on transition. It's like, well, it doesn't need to necessarily be dependent. It can like uplift it. It can be in support of. The other one is like when I watched him in the pick and roll, I was looking at a veteran. With how he attacked pick and rolls, the angles he was taking, the space he was creating, decisions he was making off the pick and roll. The only place I would nitpick is, and this is, I think, something that they probably talked to him about on how to work on it, and he's trying to, I think, mimic Dame and CJ. This is the byproduct of that. How many times did you see Anfernee try to split a double team or a trap?
I don't know. I wasn't watching for that. How many did you see?
No, I was just saying, like it was very often. Almost every opportunity that presented itself, he tried to attack it. To get the 4-on-3.
So I would say that my hesitation in having him, command the bench offense is that I don't think he's there in terms of communication. I think he's a naturally very quiet guy. And like the thing about Damian is that, while he may have made mistakes, it was always very clear, like that he had a strong command of what was going on the court. And I don't know if it didn't, and it could have been because of who he was playing with. He wasn't playing with a bunch of guys who were, the long-term part of the team, but I didn't get that same sense of sort of floor generalness that I've seen from other players from him. And that just feels like something that he could work on and be coached on while he's continuing to be. He just looks like a really good shooting guard to me, I guess is what I'm getting at.
The flip side of this is in this system that a really good shooting guard can look like Damian Lillard. Because, I mean, Damian, like, what's Dame's career high in a season? I don't think he ever cracked 7 a game, assist-wise. No, 6.9 is his highest. And that was this last year.
You mean average per game?
Yeah. Yeah, seven per game. So, I mean, you round up to 7. But, I mean, when you talk about floor generals around the league, like, you're not sitting here talking about Damian Lillard. Now, you're talking about him as a great leader, a great scorer, a great captain. But I don't think he's put in that playmaking level when realistically he should, because he doesn't have necessarily the big numbers to back it up. And that's because of the balance play between the system, between him and CJ. And I think playing on that second unit, having Hazonia, let's say they land Noah, I think that when you do that, his gravity by his playmaking is going to come out of him being a shot taker and a shot maker. Like having that pull, that's going to open him up and open those avenues up for other people. And what I saw from him in Summer League is a guy that's not necessarily a floor general, but he's never holding the ball. Like when I'm watching him attack the rim, he's got his eyes up. Like when he's attacking the rim, I'm seeing him look for lobs. I'm seeing him look for the kick out 3. I'm seeing him try to split that double team. He's looking for guys for the next step after he draws that 4-on-3. So I think it's a different style of guard that we're used to, that he's going to fit in that mold. But we have this idea of like what a point guard is. And I think it's different than what it has been here in Portland over the last couple of years.
I still think that they should have at least one other player who can play backup point guard, because also what if the worst thing happens and something happens to one of these guys? They're just too thin. Yeah,
I get that, and that's where I go with if they're gonna sign that other point guard. I want it to be an old head. Mm-hmm. Like I want it to be a guy that I don't want anybody to push Ant. Like, I don't want anybody out there who's pushing for minutes. Like, I've heard a lot of people say, again, Livingston, and I don't think Livingston's ready to be like, you know what, I'm good, I'm not going to play tonight. I think Livingston still is like, hey, I can help a team.
I just want somebody who has that presence to organize everybody, because the thing about the flow offense, when you're playing in the flow of offense, everybody has to like know and recall all of their different options and, go to where, it feels like the offense is going in that moment or whatever, but you still need to have somebody who's an anchor. And that's what I don't want. I just think it would be good if Anfernee didn't have to worry about being that person too at this point.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at those types, I think the two that are out there are Devin Harris and Jose Calderon. I think both of them would make sense. Devin Harris obviously played in Dallas. Did not play at the same time as Stotts. They were apart by a year. However, Carlisle runs essentially the same basic offensive tenets. So the offense, and probably I'm assuming the terminology is still pretty close to the same too. So having a guy like that who has been around the league and knows the system, knows how they want to play, would probably make a lot of sense. And again, isn't going to push Ant.
To kind of wrap up the Summer League question or discussion, between like Gary Trent Jr., Naz Little, and Horde, I mean, one of the things that I noticed about Gary Trent Jr., he had that one really great shooting game. He ended up with a pretty good, I think his final game. His
line looked good.
He was doing pretty good. I could tell he was working really hard on, he was over talking to the coach a lot. He was paying attention, even though on the night, even in the games where it wasn't falling, he'd turn around, look at Moran, look at one of those other, coaches to get advice. He was really actively working on improving. And it was fun to watch that, because you could tell that he's super serious. He wants to take the next leap, and he's going to put in the work to do that. And he clearly looked like that's what he was doing.
Yeah, no, he definitely looked like, if nothing else, he was not short of confidence, right? Like those were real things that we saw from him. And it was like, hey, you know what? This kid looks pretty good. I'm okay. And here's the thing. Will it translate? Will it matter next season? I think he's a candidate for the Jake Layman treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Like he could get off the bench and play some minutes, and if he earns it and shows that he can deliver, he can get more. But he could be just as quickly 15 games of DNPs.
Right. I could see Jake Layman year 2. I mean, I think not year 3. Last year was Jake Layman year 3, and that's when he got the real time. And I feel like this would be year 2. Yeah, like you said, a little bit here, a little bit there. But you know what?
Yeah.
Just when we think we know what's going to happen, suddenly he starts Noah Vonleh for half of a season.
I will say this: I think Nas Little is about as glued to the bench as he can be.
Yeah, you don't think he looks ready?
It's nothing against the kid. I love his potential. I love the athleticism and his headiness and his willingness to work. But his offensive game is so rough.
Right, and there's a lot of guys in front of him.
Yeah, and I think the Blazers have committed to, hey, we'll be a strong defensive unit in the sense of a team, but it's more important for us to have at least 4, if not 5 guys out there who can get buckets. Right. And Nas he doesn't have anything you were like, we can count on him to be a finisher in transition. We can count on him to be a knockdown 3-point shooter in the corner. Like there's nothing there where you're like, but I will say this: if there is a chance for him to play his way onto the floor, it will be because of defense.
Right. Well, and we just talked about the generations, right? And having to have some of the younger guys that you are developing to take on a stronger role later. Like everybody can't be in the rotation right away. There's just not enough minutes to go around for 15 guys, right? So someone has to be developing and coming along. Because, I mean, I got to think, I'm super curious about how they're going to use Hazonia. I'm very anxious. I think that could be really fun.
I think this is not to get too detracted from anything here, but I firmly believe that he's going to be Evan Turner.
I know. That's what I keep thinking him as Evan Turner Jr. And
he's got the attitude to back it up.
Yeah.
That's what really makes it fun.
When I was talking to other writers about these guys, they were saying, okay, I have one more summer league thing that I really enjoyed was all these Golden State Warrior fans coming up to me going, oh my God, I can't believe you guys traded Myers Leonard. And I was like, I'm so happy for Myers for that, right? Because like Golden State, people remember Myers Leonard just going
absolutely
on them and just going like melting them down. And I was just so happy for them that people who have been watching the Golden State Warriors for years be so good were just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe your team doesn't have Myers Leonard anymore. How are you guys gonna do that? I mean, he's so good. And we both love Myers, but the Myers that we saw in that game wasn't necessarily, the Myers that we've seen for the last 7 years.
I was genuinely just really happy that when I found out, that was his last game, that was his last game.
Yeah.
Like that's, Dane Delgado wrote an article, like it was, that's the fitting way to end his tenure here because of how up and down it was. Mm-hmm. To go out on a stage like that in the Western Conference Finals in what was truly an unbelievable first half performance.
It was 25 points in the first half.
What was he, 11 of 13?
Yeah, it was,
I think he was.
Unbelievable, yeah.
It was about as close to a perfect half of basketball as someone can play.
Right, and everybody just wanted him to have it. And it was also really nice to have him come and hang out with the Portland fans and get a chance to say goodbye. And when I shook his hand and he put his 2 giant hands around mine and looked right in my eyes and I said, thank you for, the time. It was really great watching you grow up in Portland. And he was like, thank you. That means so much to me. And I was just like, I needed that closure.
He's a good dude.
Yeah.
I wish him nothing but the best.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, I can't remember what we were talking about. We were talking about Golden State Warriors.
Summer League, Golden State, and I think you were going to mention some of the other people that you talked to from the teams that Portland may or may not be competing with.
Yes. It was fun to sit down with other writers and just try to figure out who even people had on their own team because things have changed so completely. And so I did sit down and I, put a microphone in front of a few of the the writers from some of the teams that we're probably going to see a lot of, or who went through a lot of interesting changes. So I wanted to play some of those throughout the next couple of weeks so that we could try to figure out how, what any of that is going to mean to the Blazers. So first up, I spoke with Harrison Faigen he writes for Silver Screen and Roll about the Lakers, because as we all know, the Lakers have had quite the offseason. Maybe not quite the offseason they thought they were going to have. Harrison has a pretty funny analogy for that. So let's go ahead and listen to Harrison and then check back in, and we can talk about what we think the current situation for the Lakers is going to actually mean for the Blazers. I'm here now with Harrison Faigen from Silver Screen and Roll to talk about the Lakers. You had quite a summer down there in Los Angeles. Can you start off by, is it possible to just kind of summarize what happened in less than an hour and a half?
I don't know. The way that I have described their off season is, it's sort of like, do you watch The Office? It's sort of like that scene where Kevin is like fun. He's walking in with the thing of chili and he spills it on the ground and it's like all over the place and he's like trying to swap it up. But like, imagine if that scene, if it had melted through the floor and then there was gold under there. Like, that's kind of how the Lakers got to where they got to, is like the Rambuses and the craziness of the coaching search and somehow missing out on like their two top candidates, or at least one. And like, because they lowballed him, having to go with Frank Vogel, who wasn't even part of the initial search, like the craziness with the Jason Kidd hire and all that. But then like they almost got Kawhi Leonard and they pivoted pretty well on their plan B. So they've made out okay. It wasn't obviously like the ideal, it wasn't the path that you dropped to get here, but they've mostly come out of it all right.
So interesting things happened on pretty much every single level down there, like from the very top. And, maybe there's been like some giant turnover in, Staples Center staff as well. I don't know. But which of the kind of areas where there was turnover, coaching staff, front office mayhem, player staff, which one do you think is going to have like the biggest impact?
I think it has to be the players, just because they finally decided to pivot back to like normal, rational NBA thinking and sign shooters around LeBron James. It's this revolutionary new plan that no one's ever tried before, except for literally everyone else who's had success with LeBron. And so I think that just having players that make sense, even though it's obviously their first option would have been to get Kawhi, and I think that they were confident they were going to get him, and obviously that didn't happen. But once they didn't, almost every single guy that they've signed, other than I think like basically Rondo, is a capable 3-point shooter, and you'll be able to space the floor around Anthony Davis and LeBron, which is really what you need at this point. You don't need necessarily a bunch of playmakers. You don't need all of that other stuff that they tried to pivot to last season. And, I know that Lakers fans are a little up and down on Rob Pelinka, especially after kind of the crazy offseason that they've had. But just on the player signings front, I think he overpaid a few of them, but they at least have guys that make sense now. And I think that will make the biggest impact on the team, because the front office drama, ultimately it matters. But with all the guys that have functional no trade clauses because they're on kind of 1-year deals via bird rights, and so it would be hard to have like the trade deadline madness that they had last year. And there's no like old guys versus young guys kind of dynamic or like split in the locker room. And, I just think that overall, just the players that they've signed is going to make the biggest difference.
So you feel like the roster as it is probably there at least through the end of the season. You don't foresee a bunch of trade deadline.
Maybe they trade one or two of them, but for me, it's just hard to imagine all of these guys agreeing to go to the same place to like be kind of consolidated together and packaged somewhere else. I just think the gymnastics of that are kind of functionally really hard to do. And like all the other guys can't be traded till December because they're new signings so it's just like, it would be tough for them to shake things up very much if they can do so at all. I mean, it's a LeBron team, so there's always going to be some antsiness where like some stuff will happen, and there's going to be drama this year. You have the whole Frank Vogel, Jason Kidd situation. You have 2 stars in Los Angeles, so there's going to be, we're going to get some loosely sourced stories about whose team it is and how they're fighting for control. Like, I don't necessarily believe that that's the case, but there's going to be drama. It's LA, that's how it is. But yeah.
So because so much turnover has happened and so much has been going on over the last couple weeks. Can you just, for people who don't know the Lakers as well as you do, just summarize like who are the main players now on the team besides LeBron and Anthony Davis? Who's left? Okay,
so this is all right. So I'm getting quizzed on the roster. They're at 14 now.
You don't have to do all of them. Just like who are the main?
Yeah,
who you imagine are going to be the mainstays?
I think obviously so LeBron and Anthony Davis will be the two biggest impact contributors, and they're apparently going to like quote unquote start LeBron at point guard. So he will bring the ball up now and control the offense instead of just getting it.
Rondo feels about that.
I don't know. The fact that they brought Rondo back and then they're still probably not going to start him at point guard and have LeBron do it is strange to me. But I don't know. I don't run the team. And, I kind of considered it inevitable that he was going to be back the second they traded for Anthony Davis, just because he's really close with Anthony Davis. He's really close with LeBron. And then once they signed Boogie, I was like, it's a matter of minutes before we get the Rondo news. And then I think it was like 15 minutes later, we got that Woj bomb or whoever reported it. So like, I think Rondo will play just because he's close to all those guys on the team, and that's going to matter for locker room dynamics. I think they have JaVale McGee, who will play some role. DeMarcus Cousins will play a role. Avery Bradley, it seems like right now, I don't know this, but just based on the amount of money that they gave him, it seems like they consider him a rotation player. And if they're going to start LeBron at point guard, they're going to need someone to defend point guard. So I imagine Avery Bradley may end up starting at quote unquote small forward and then actually guard the point guards, and LeBron will guard the wings. So I think we hit KCP is back for some reason. So he will play again, I guess. I'm not incredibly excited to watch that after the last 2 years, but yeah. And then Alex Caruso's back.
He's my guy.
I really like him.
I love watching him play.
I'm really happy that he got a deal. He's like nobody's worked harder over the last 2 years than him, and he's finally getting paid as an NBA player, so that's great. I'm trying to think of anyone else like that I'm missing. There's probably somebody really Danny Green is the one. Yeah, their third highest paid player is so I think.
Are you happy about that pickup? That one seems.
I think that was a really good signing, even though obviously they overpaid. And I think that the reason they overpaid was because they had to be like, well, look, if we miss out on Kawhi, we'll give you this amount of money so that you don't have to take your fallback money from the Mavericks. And they basically paid him like $6 million short of what the Mavericks offer was for 3 years. So it's a massive upgrade, and that's how you get guys to wait on you. And Danny Green is literally the perfect kind of player that you would want with Anthony Davis and LeBron James. He's 3-and-D, spaces the floor really well. I know he struggled in the playoffs, but everybody kind of can get banged up by then. And so there's a possibility that happens again, but there's a possibility he's totally fine. And so it was a little bit of an overpay, but it's the kind of guy that you'd think potentially with those two. I don't know how you feel about this, but like I would think that could be greater than the sum of their parts with those three, just because he's kind of a perfect remora fish to kind of follow those two sharks around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, he seems like, he was so critical, I think, to Kawhi's success. I mean, obviously Kawhi was great, and I think it's absolutely perfect that they're still in the same city, so they can still see each other, check in regular, because I imagine, Kawhi's had the same guy with him this whole time, so at least they're going to be in the same city.
They can room together.
Yeah, I didn't want to open a wound bringing up Kawhi.
No, I'm fine.
But so we talked a lot about the people who are coming in. Who are some of the guys that you're going to miss?
I'm definitely going to miss. I will not miss covering the LeVar angle of this, but I will miss having Lonzo around. I think that he was honestly like if a blogger became an NBA player. He's like it's very subtly funny. He's funnier online than in person. He's a nice guy. I just and honestly, I really enjoyed watching him play. I know that a lot of people online, it's like kind of fashionable to make fun of the jump shot, and I get it. It's janky. Like it's not a sure thing that he's going to be a star or anything like that. But I really enjoyed watching him play and how tenacious he is on defense, how willing he kind of was to do whatever on offense to make up for his deficiencies. Like before he got hurt, him and LeBron had developed a really good 1-3 screening game where he was kind of doing what Kyrie used to do in the playoffs as far as screening for LeBron, but he was a little better at it just because he's a little bigger and stronger. And then he was getting the ball in the Draymond spot down near the nail. And I just think he's a really versatile guy. He's already really impactful despite not being able to shoot probably better than either of us for the most part. And I'll take that back. Lonzo can definitely outshoot me. I'm not challenging an NBA player to a shooting contest. But I really enjoyed watching him play. He's just I like guys that there's not really a comp for, that are just kind of weird. And so I enjoyed watching him from that angle as well, and I hope he does well in New Orleans.
Awesome. Any other aspects of the offseason you want to touch on?
No, I just I'm right now I'm excited to have them wrap up their free agency signings whenever they fill this last roster spot. And then I'm going to Hawaii in August. So get to go take a break before. And then we get started on pre-writing Jason Kidd is going to be interim head coach as soon as, he does his inevitable coup.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. Well, thank you so much, Harrison, for joining me.
Yeah.
Can you want to tell people how to find you and how to find your work?
Yeah. So you can find me on Twitter at HMFAIGEN. That's at HM Faigen. I tweet a lot about the Lakers and also my cat. So that's great. Or not, if it's not your thing. Silver Screen and Roll is the website that I write for. And if you enjoyed this podcast or, you want to check us out or you want any coverage of the Lakers, just search Silver Screen and Roll on Spotify, iTunes, whatever podcast app you use. And we have the Silver Screen and Roll podcast. I'm really proud of the team that we've been able to put together. And just if you want some news on the Lakers, those are the places to check out.
Okay. So I took away a couple of things from that conversation, and I'm wondering...
Conversation? You mean Lakers propaganda?
Well, maybe it worked because it did raise a couple of concerns for me, but it also kind of made me not worry about certain things.
That's better feeling.
So, there's they don't have Jrue Holiday, but there's kind of a strong resemblance or just sort of a hearkening back to that horrific Pelicans sweep. With Anthony Davis and Rondo. And even though, Boogie wasn't on that team, there's still just the idea of him was on that team. So for the Blazers' sake, I worry a little bit about that because I worry about them going, oh, let's just send Danny Green and two other guys after Damian the whole time. And, because it worked when you guys were in New Orleans. So that's kind of a concern for me. But one thing that I do think that is going to be more of a story than I think, Harrison alluded to is I think the coaching drama is going to be big. And I think it's going to be distracting.
They hired a head coach to be the assistant head coach.
Right.
And it's just and that former head coach, that's the assistant coach, literally took somebody's job, forced an organization to fire a coach under contract so he could come take that job and use that opportunity to try to leverage against another team. And there's no way in hell that this won't come back to bite him in the ass. No way.
And Rondo could totally be a coach too. I look at him as the next, in line. He could totally be a player coach as well. So I think that is going to be more drama than they think. Do you think the Blazers will be able to take care of the Lakers this year?
I think to an extent, yeah. The big one obviously is going to be, without Nurkic. With Nurkic, yeah, because, like the Avengers have a Hulk, we have a Nurkic. Mm-hmm. There hasn't been a whole lot of answers for him. They're we've talked about this plenty of times. There's 3 or 4 guys in the league who can physically handle Yusuf Nurkic all night long. Mm-hmm. And Anthony Davis is not one of those guys.
What if Anthony Davis is playing alongside JaVale McGee?
Well, JaVale, no, that doesn't necessarily bother me. And I know JaVale's kind of been Nurkic's kryptonite as far as shot blocking, but he kind of changed some of that narrative a little bit before he got hurt. The thing for me when I look at this is obviously pre-return of Nurkic. Well, what will the Blazers do? Well, you added Hood. You're hoping Zach figures it out, and you hope Whiteside's got enough gravity to kind of, solve that problem because the Lakers are going to be better. Danny Green's a good signing. It's a really, really good signing. It was so good that it caught me by surprise because the Lakers don't historically make good signings, in the past decade. I think that's going to present some problems, but. And I'm a huge LeBron guy. I'm one of those folks that goes, yeah, no, LeBron is the most talented player to ever play the game. Physically, talent package, the whole actually delivering on it. But he hasn't played defense in 2 years. So how they treat that is going to be really interesting, how they compensate for that. And I guess you heard Harrison talk about that as far as what they may or may not do. But I still think there's plenty of holes. There's still like the chaos, and let's not forget here the LeBron factor.
Mm-hmm.
Like LeBron is in and of himself chaos. So seeing how that part of it plays out should be interesting, to say the least.
It feels like the whole first half of the year there's going to be a lot of adjusting things because, the three guys, was it three who left? Ingram, Ball, and was there Hart. Right. I mean, those three, weren't.
They played a lot of minutes.
They weren't a big three, but they were important and they had grown together and they, were hitting their stride. So I kind of look at it as like, will Danny Green be enough to offset the loss of, the combined power of those three?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I think there's going to be so much drama. And plus now they also are going to have, their roommates, the Clippers, kind of in their heads, I would assume, after that off season that, I think it's going to, I don't know. I feel like it's going to be a rough year for the Lakers. I think I was a lot higher on I can't remember. It was a long time ago, but I think I was a lot higher on the Lakers last year.
Oh,
I mean, I know they have Anthony Davis now, but it's just, and I understand that Anthony Davis is, a generational talent or whatever, but I still haven't really seen him do anything except for beat the Blazers and, sweep the Lakers, sweep the Blazers in the first round of the playoffs. So I don't know. I think it'll be very interesting.
I think you hit on something there that's going to be kind of the storyline for the first half of the season. That's the turnover. And it's not just the Lakers. It's the Lakers. It's the Blazers. It's the Clippers. I mean, you go up and down.
OKC.
It's OKC.
Houston
it's the
now.
Houston. It's the Warriors.
I know. I didn't.
No Clay, no KD.
I was looking at their depth chart and I was like, who are these people?
I mean, it's going to be Steph, D'Lo, and Dre. That's going to be significantly different about how they attack teams.
Yeah, D'Angelo Russell. I don't even know what that's going to look like.
Honestly, I think it's going to be a fun watch because of the difference between D'Lo and Clay. Like, he's nowhere near the shooter that Clay is, obviously, but like the fact that he's going to have the ball in his hands and they're going to look a little different, I think is going to be fun. Mm-hmm. Also, they won't be just like cruising night in, night out and killing teams. So that'll be fun too. The Clippers, you have to integrate, the number one and number two options into your offense.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's different. Yeah. Like, okay, you may have to change a lot to, put everything together. And I think Doc's the coach to be able to do it, but it's going to be interesting to see how all of those things look. Hell, Portland's going to probably be a little bit more reliant on their wings for a little bit and to see how it works and then maybe reel it back. So, I mean, that's a pretty significant change.
So we've talked a bunch over the last couple of years about, the Blazers in transition. So, in addition to never having very many assists, they're always like real low on transition. Do you see, with the addition of Hazonia and with the development of Anfernee, or even, some of the other new guys, do you see the Blazers doing any more in transition next year?
Yeah, I think that'll be a way that it kind of unlocks the second unit. At least for
the second unit, right? Okay.
Yeah, the first unit. I mean, Rodney's not. Realistically, Rodney's kind of a traditional what we've seen alongside Dame and CJ kind of wing. Doesn't really run a ton. Yeah. Like there's a couple times in the playoffs where Rodney got in transition, and I was kind of shocked by how not good he looked compared to the image that I had in my head of how many times I'd seen him in the open court. I don't know if it was just like, man, they don't run here, so I'm kind of rusty.
Yeah, no, it's just so unusual to see anybody in the first unit, except for, occasionally Dame or CJ might leak out. But I remember the handful of times that Nurkic got in transition and we were like, holy moly.
Yeah. Look out.
Here comes that freight train. And I don't know if Whiteside is he any more active in transition? I don't really think he is.
No, he's gonna fit in that mold pretty well. The free points. I'm hoping the second unit can generate some of those free points in transition and backdoor cuts, alley-oops, things of that nature.
To bring it back just super briefly to the Lakers, what kind of highlights do you think we're gonna see coming from a team such as they're constructed?
I mean, if they optimize that offense and they play AD at the 5, which he has said he does not like playing the 5, he's the modern day LaMarcus. I don't like playing the 5, but you look at his numbers at the 5.
You're a
like,
5.
Good God, you're a 5, dude. We're not letting you play anything else because your numbers at the 5 are insane. Yeah. And that's the case with him. His numbers at the 5 are otherworldly. So if they're smart, the optimized lineups between Danny Green, LeBron at the 4, AD at the 5, and then you're sprinkling whatever guards you want for a little bit more spacing, they're going to be hell to deal with. I think the interesting storyline I think a lot of people are overlooking here, and I'm not saying LeBron's done, but I want to see how a guy his size at his age comes back from a groin injury, the first real injury he's had in his career. So I'm really interested to see how that comes together, because let's say LeBron isn't LeBron anymore. Like, dare I say, how significant a blow is that for the Lakers, where they we got LeBron, we got AD, we didn't get Kawhi, but we have a chance, and all of a sudden LeBron takes one of those, late career swoons that we've seen from players.
He turns into a regular star instead of a superstar.
Yeah, that would be nuts. I'm not hoping for it or anything like that, but as I sit here, and I know LeBron and I are not even remotely closely related to the same species, but we're the same age. And I'm like, you know what? Things hurt a little bit more now than they did a year ago, It's like, coming back from a groin injury the first time at that size? I'm not saying he's washed, and I'm not saying he's going to have problems. It's just, for the first time in my life watching him, I'm finally like, you saw God bleed.
He's starting to look a little human.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting storyline as far as what type of highlights we could see from this team, because the highlight may be the lack of highlights.
Wow, you mean just solid fundamental basketball?
Just like LeBron having that, maybe he loses that step and becomes a little more ground bound. Yeah. And the reason they're saying LeBron is the point guard is because he's legitimately the point guard. I think it just could be, I think it could be fun.
Yeah. Well, I think let's go ahead and wrap it up here. And next week we'll talk about a different team and maybe also do a deep dive on a different one of the new players. Although I've been watching Hassan Whiteside highlights all day, and I will report to you that I watched all of his assists today. It didn't take very long.
Didn't take you very long.
No. But, the curious thing is, will he, in Stotts' offense, will he be more likely to have more assists because he'll have more opportunities for him? But the part that I thought you would be interested in, not a single bounce pass.
He's not.
They're all chest passes or high. He does a lot of high passes over people.
He knows his limits.
You like
I don't
that.
mind.
You like that high stuff. So I thought you would like that.
And the thing is, listen, if you're Steve Nash and you can keep the dribble alive at all times and throw a one-handed reach wraparound bounce pass through traffic with either hand, you go ahead and do that. If you're Hassan Whiteside, you stick to what you know, baby. I don't want to see you outside the box. You got a box that you play in. Let's just play in that. That's not your world. Now you want to do some wild stuff on a putback dunk? You go ahead and show out, big man. But
everybody's homework for the week is to go watch all of Hassan Whiteside's assists. It'll take 4 minutes, and then figure out how he can be unlocked to get more assists within the Blazers offense.
If you're looking for the bright side of it, Plumlee went from 0.9, and I think Nurkic is at 1.2.
Yeah, both of those guys increased their assist number. So I'm not being facetious here.
No, but I think it was increased opportunity plus skill.
Right.
Because I think both Plumlee and Nurkic have a no doubt ability as passers.
And they were a lot younger when they came here than Whiteside.
Yeah, and
Whiteside's been around a long time.
That's the thing is, I think he's more of your traditional big man. I think this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I think he has blinders on of this is, because if you don't know the Whiteside story, go kind of check it out, because he came out of nowhere and then got a $100 million contract. But I think it was this is what I do. I rebound, I block shots, I get dunks.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the things he just locked in on. He's like, I'm going to do these, and my counting number is going to look as good as anybody else's. Yeah. And that's how I'm going to make a team. And I just think some coach pulled him aside. He's like, man, you have got to have an NBA skill. What is it going to be? And those are what he just kind of locked in.
Yeah. And you know what? We need him to do them for a year or for half a year. And if he can step in and, learn a couple of other new tricks, that would be awesome too. Okay, let's wrap it up. Let's see, Dan. What do you have coming up? Was Outsiders still on during the summer? You're still on, right?
Oh yeah. No, we're still on. We're on every week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 6:30 till 7. Joe Shane and I are all back. We just actually did our first show together, and all three of us together in 3 weeks. It's kind of weird, with everybody kind of taking their vacation. So it was cool. Do have something cool. We will have. Young Simons, Anfernee, will be on the show July 25th. I've got confirmation that we're all locked in, so make sure you tune in there. If you've got questions you want to ask, DM them to me. Shoot them to me on Twitter, whatever.
For the Outsiders.
For the Outsiders, yes. We're Joe Shane and I are going to have them in studio live. I'm trying to work with some folks to see if we can maybe have a little horse competition with him. If we can get him there a little bit early.
You really want to shoot against him?
I think it'd be hilarious.
Good luck.
Philip Seymour Hoffman out there. Make it rain. Rain Man. Just getting absolutely abused by a 20-year-old. But yeah, that's some of the big news we have coming. And then hopefully we'll have some announcements about next season here coming pretty soon. How about you, Tara?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at TCBBigs. My new thing all summer is I'm just going to retweet Magic Johnson's tweets and insert Blazer-specific content in them because they're so wonderfully generic that really anybody can use them. So that's about all I'm got going on this summer at TCBBigs on Twitter. Let's see. Oh, you can also follow Blazers Edge at Blazers Edge. You can follow the Hoops and Talks podcast. We'll have new episodes coming out. If not this week, then back next week at Hoops and Talks on Twitter. And don't forget to go to, what is it called? Apple Podcasts or wherever it is you get your podcasts, and rate and review and subscribe to the Blazers Edge podcast. It helps other people find us. I think that'll about do it for us on July 14th. We are halfway through July, Dan. We are that much closer to the beginning of the regular season.
It's about that time, huh?
Right. All right. Thanks for listening.